Welcome, everyone. We will start our session at 2 minutes after the top of the hour. Again, welcome. We're glad to have you. We'll start our session at 2 minutes after the top of the hour. Thank you. Welcome again, everyone. We will start our session at 2 minutes after the top of the hour. We will allow others to join us. So again, welcome again. We're glad to have you. We'll start our session at 2 minutes after the top of the hour. So in about 4 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Welcome, welcome everyone. We will get started shortly, another couple minutes. We want to allow others to join us. So again, we're going to start in about 2 minutes. You still have an opportunity to get some coffee or something to drink or what have you. Again, welcome. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here in another couple of seconds, allow others to join us. Welcome everyone, welcome. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, good evening, good afternoon, good morning to some of you. Welcome again to Sumo Logic's Search Mastery Certification. My name is Odell Gordon. I'm a technical trainer here at Sumo Logic. A little bit about my background for those of you that haven't taken the fundamentals with me yesterday. I've been in IT for 30 plus years now. Various roles centralized around data, whether it's managing data, supporting data, or what have you, building data sources or databases, also in DevOps as well, and of course, training. I'm calling in from the Midwest here. It's about to be dawn here. Sun's going to go down shortly. We had a lot of rain here, so hopefully you're somewhere comfortable. Thank you for those that are putting where you're from in the chat. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot for sharing. Again, we'll go ahead and get started. If you have any questions or issues or problems, go ahead and put those in the chat. I'm going to man the chat, so just bear with me as I'm also lecturing as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I see a few of you. Thank you, Georgia, Janet. Thank you for letting me know, Georgia. And I see some, quite a few from Texas. It's awesome. Mississippi again. I love Mississippi, and Tokyo. I would love to go there as well. Seattle, been there. Okay, thank you for sharing, all of you. All right, Melbourne. All right, I've been to Brisbane. Thank you. All right, so our agenda for this evening, or this afternoon, or morning, depending on where you are. I'm going to give you that 500-foot overview, that introduction, and then we'll go over into our objectives. Then this course is really lab heavy, lab intensive. So you and I are going to get our hands dirty. We're going to log into our training environment again, and we're going to create some searches while we're parsing and looking at field extraction rules, FERs. We're then going to do some conditional and filtering operations. We'll then plot some objects on the map. We'll format our results. We'll look at some moving and rolling averages. We'll then look at some trends and some outliers, as well as some comparisons. And then finally, we'll create an alert. Then you'll have an opportunity to get certified again. Again, it'll be 60 minutes. I'll be here with you. Now, once you take the certification and pass the certification, we'll go ahead and send you that $15 Uber Eats certificate as well, voucher, okay? I'll put the actual link in the chat as we get during the actual exam. All right, awesome. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save some bandwidth as I do all the time. I want you to focus on the actual slides and the lecture. Okay, so I'll turn off my video. All right, now, what you're seeing, again, I'm going to go over this rather quickly because these slides are the same slides that were in my fundamentals course. If you've taken the fundamentals with us, these are the same slides, okay? So what we're demonstrating here is 4 examples of dashboards that you can create in our tool, okay? So if you're looking to, from an operational perspective, and you want to find out how the health of your systems, are there any mean times to resolve or to identify? Again, you can glean that type of information from an operational intelligence dashboard. If you wanted to find out where users are logging into your internet or to your environment from around the world, if you want to find out if they're logging in from multiple locations simultaneously, those types of information you can glean from a security intelligence dashboard. And then from a business perspective, you can find out if you did a marketing campaign, how successful it was. You can find out which web pages users are frequently viewing. Things of that matter you can glean from a business intelligence dashboard. And then finally, from a global perspective, you can build a dashboard to compare your data comparative to other companies worldwide. Okay, so again, those are 4 examples of dashboards that you can create in our continuous intelligence platform. Now, those dashboards are going to be created off of the data that you have. So that's that machine data, those logs, those metrics, those traces, all of that machine data, whether it comes from apps or cloud service systems or mobile devices or third-party apps. Again, we're going to collect those items and allow you to go ahead and build those dashboards as well. Now, what do we offer? Again, we offer analytics. Be aware that we're a multi-tenancy environment, which means that we're very secure. Okay, security is priority number 1. One of our core values is we're in it with our partners, and we're speaking from a security perspective. If your company needs to grow, they need to increase their size, or maybe they want to downsize, they want to limit or shorten their environments. Again, we're scalable and elastic. We'll grow with you. We're going to identify some machine learning, just as we did in the fundamentals. If you recall, we used the log reduce, the machine learning and advanced analytics is essentially what that is. Okay. Some companies like to incorporate Sumo logic, so they utilize the APIs, the application programming interfaces. And then finally, as I mentioned, this flyout window, these are our attestments. Okay, again, we take our certification seriously. We're SOC 2 certified, FedRAMP certified, HIPAA certified. So again, our attestments. And then finally, your people. And what we mean here is you have an actual single source of truth, okay? Where we can collaborate across all lines of business. So basically, we can share our speedy decision-making across all lines of the business, okay? So again, the big takeaways from this screenshot is 1, you can build dashboards. 2, we're gonna be capturing your logs, your metrics, again, all of that machine data. 3, we provide analytics. And 4, again, you can share your findings across all lines of the business. Okay. All right. Again, another repeat slide. And again, it talks about it at a very high level. How do you get things going? How do you get the ball rolling in this tool? Okay. So we use a vehicle, and the vehicle to get your logs, your metrics, your machine data into our environment, that vehicle is called a collector. Okay. And again, if you want to learn more about that, that class is tomorrow, the administration course. We're going to install collectors. Okay. So data collection, those collectors, you can define your sources. Remember, those collectors are lightweight Java apps. Again, it's going to encrypt, compress, and send your logs and your metrics to our environment. Once your logs and metrics are in our environment, then that's going to allow you, me, us, pardon me, you and me, and to allow us to search and analyze using operators and being able to display our results in different types of charts. That's where you and I are going to spend most of our time at, on the searching and analyzing and utilizing operators. Okay. And then, of course, you'll be able to add some visualizations and be able to set up alerts so you can monitor your dashboards as well. Okay. But again, we're going to spend our time on the searching and analyzing in our data flow. Here you see the 5 types of metadata tags. We are going to use the one in bold, our preferred one, the most often used, the recommended one, the underscore source category. That one can be freely configured. For example, I can set the underscore source category equal to AWS East Apache access. So I'm getting my access logs from AWS East. Maybe I have multiple regions, or maybe I wanted to labs Apache access, or maybe dev Apache access, and so forth and so on. So those are just examples of how you can freely configure your actual source categories. All right, so again, that was that high level overview, introduction, recap. Hopefully you remember some of all of that information, okay? Now, what I'd like for you all to do is now think of a 3-digit number from from 1 to 999. Think of that 3-digit number. And just as some are doing, put that 3-digit number in the chat so I can take a note of those numbers. I will go ahead and put the credentials in the chat for you as well. And I will log in so you can see how it works. So again, these are the credentials you're going to use. So if you watch me, you're going to go ahead and open up a browser. You're going to go ahead and type in service.sumologic.com. We are logging into our training environment. This is where we manage. We know the data being ingested. We know the environment. So again, you're logging into our environment. And again, be aware that you'll have access to this environment until the first Monday of the next month. So we change the password each Monday of the next month. Okay, the first Monday of every month. All right, so once we actually type in the credentials there, we'll go ahead and you're going to log in and type in the email address. The email address is training plus, pardon me, analyst. And you're going to put in a number. Then you're going to add the @ symbol, Sumo Logic. Then you're going to type in the password, uppercase S for security, 22, exclamation mark. I could use a different number. You don't have to change. No worries. I'll just put in my old number there. Okay. Anyhow, so again, here's what you're logging in as. And if you do happen to log in with the same credentials, there's no big deal. Just name your items with your actual initials. So no big deal. I need to clean this up. I got a few things out here anyhow. Okay, so hopefully everyone's able to log in. Go ahead and confirm that you're logged in, please. You can put it in the chat, or you can go ahead and raise your hand, either or. Just don't want to confirm. I don't want to leave anyone before we go any further. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Liam. Thank you, Chi. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, David. Let me know if you have any issues logging in, please. Let me know if you have any issues logging in. Thank you, Sudler. All right. Just cleaning up a little bit while we make sure everyone's in. I don't want to leave anyone. You're in, but your page doesn't look like mine. Okay, so if you've come in our environment, you have a bunch of tabs open, go ahead and close all tabs. So you can go up to any one of the tabs and close all the tabs. Thank you, Sing. Glad you're in. Stelly, did that work? Did that close all your tabs and now maybe you're back? All right, good. Now, just to kind of kick the tires a little bit, a lot of you have taken the fundamentals course. We're not going to go over the environment in depth, but be aware, this is my navigation panel over to the left. If you're not seeing the navigation panel, you see a stack of blueberry pancakes there. You click on that, that expands the navigation panel. Or you collapse it, expand and collapse. So again, we won't really be using the navigation panel that much. We're going to be mostly in our log searches, okay? So hopefully no one has any issues logging in. Please let me know so I can not leave you. Make sure this is big enough for everyone. 125 should be good. Let's maximize it. Okay. All right. All right. Everyone's in. Looks like everyone in. Okay. Awesome. Okay. All right. So now, if you recall, ladies and gentlemen, if you recall, if you were in the fundamentals course, one of the things that we did was we went to the home tab and we went to the learn link. And in our fundamentals course, when we scrolled down, we saw the labs for our fundamentals. If you come back tomorrow or whenever you take the administration, again, here's the labs for the administration. But we are about to go through the search mastery course. So where do we get the actual labs for that? So if you remember, make sure you're on your home tab, your learn link. Let's go to the documentation, that box over in the right, bottom right. It says docs. Let's click on that. And if you've taken a class with me, I often tell you to go ahead to the start here. So let's go ahead and click on the start here. And if you take a look at what your URL reads, this is actually where I tell you this is your major resource, the help-sumo-logic.com. Anyhow, let's go down to where we see the phrase Quick Start Labs and Tutorials. On the left-hand side, you just see the phrase Quick Start Labs and Tutorials. Let's click on that. And here's where we can find the labs for our search mastery. So right here in the center, you should see the search mastery. Go ahead and click on that. Anyone having any trouble, I'll go ahead and put it in the actual chat for you. There it is. Now, if you're in a Google Chrome environment, one of the techniques you can utilize is you can pin the tabs, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and pin my labs tab. Just go ahead and right click on the tab and choose pin. Again, the advantage of that is I can toggle between the CIP, the Continuous Intelligence Platform, and the lab guide. Okay, so hopefully everyone is up to this point. All right, so if we take a look at the lab guide, the very first introduction is really letting you know how to get into the training environment, okay? You guys should be aware of that already. All right. Now, in all our labs, you're also, hopefully, you remember that in all our labs, to go to the next lab, you can click in the link in the bottom right corner. So we're going to go to where it reads, make sure you're all the way down, where it reads Search Basic Metadata and Keywords, Lab 1. Let's go ahead and click on that. All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, this course starts out kind of slow. All right, so we start out real slow, and then we pick up speed, we pick up pace. Okay, so let's go ahead and get in here. So we're going to go ahead and again, I'm going to guide you through these labs. We're going to go ahead and learn the use of metadata and keywords. Why? So we can narrow the search and improve the performance. Now, I know you know how to read. I know all of that. But again, in case these types of things appear on an exam somewhere, you'll know. So I might be adding inflection so you can kind of remember it. But again, we're going to learn the use of metadata and keywords to narrow the search scope and improve performance. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and grab the code under our number 1. Just highlight and grab it and copy it. And that's what we're going to be doing a lot of, but I'm going to deviate a little bit so we don't have to grab and copy a little bit. I put it in the chat for you just in case you need it. So we're going to run this for the last 15 minutes. So let's go ahead and go back to the CIP, ladies and gentlemen, and let's create a new log search. How do we do that, Odell? Well, we click on the blue new button there with the plus symbol. Click on that. Then it gives us a bunch of searches to choose, and we're going to choose a log search. And that's the one we're going to do quite a bit. As a reminder, when you create a new log search, it's going to give you and default to the last 15 minutes, okay? Let's go ahead and paste in our query in the actual log search environment. So we're using that favorite metadata tag that Odell keeps harping about. We're using that source category. We're bringing back all of our access log messages for the last 15 minutes. Let's go ahead and run that. All right, so what we see here is, first of all, you see a histogram minute by minute, okay? Underneath the histogram, you see the status is done, the elapsed time, the results, and if ever needed, there's the actual session ID. Then you see the messages tab. It gives you the display fields in the field browser. We refer to this area here, ladies and gentlemen, as the field browser. Ladies and gentlemen, we refer to this as a field browser, this area here, okay? If that ever appears on an exam somewhere. Okay, so and then we see what's checked here, the time and message. We'll talk about these other fields coming up. Over to the right, we see we're looking at, of those 7,501 results, we're looking at page 1 of 301 pages. We're looking at 25 per page. You remember from fundamentals, if we wanted to change that per page value, we would go over here to the gear symbol, the settings, and we choose display message preferences, and we could change that. Okay. All right, now let's go ahead and in our query, up in our query, we're going to go ahead and add a space, and we want to search for our 404s. Okay, so let's go ahead and type the AND operator, which is optional. It's implied. The AND is implied. And let's add a space and type in 404s. So what this is reading is it's going to bring back my access log messages that have 404s in them. That's a keyword. Okay, let's go ahead and run that. So if you take a look here, ladies and gentlemen, my results are far less than what I had before. I have 215 results of log messages from my accesses of 404s. I can see that scrolling through the first page, all of my 404s are highlighted. Okay, I can see I'm looking at page 1 of 9. So that keyword allowed it to limit my results. It improved performance. I didn't bring back everything. Okay. Now I'm going to demonstrate. I'm going to digress for a moment here. I'm going to remove the AND to demonstrate to you that the AND is implied. We only put that there so for readability. Okay. It's optional. So my report still runs, still gives me my results. The number may be a little different, but again, I still get results. Okay. All right, now I'm gonna put mine back to where it is. Now, you and I together, let's go ahead and replace the 404s. And let's type together an open paren, the word error, case insensitive. Hence, you see I typed in mixed case, just so you can see it's case insensitive. So we want error, then we're going to use the or operator, and we want to use the phrase check, okay? And we'll use one of those SQL similar features, the asterisk, which is a wildcard. So your query should look similar to mine. Of course, you don't have to do the error like I did. I was just being, didn't have to do that. But anyway, it's case insensitive. All right, so again, we're saying underscore source category equals our lab Apache access. So bring back our access messages where it's error or the phrase that begins with check. So it can be check out, check in, whatever begins with check, okay? And again, these are case insensitive. Let's go ahead and run that. So notice if you scroll through your results, I have 113 total results. I'm looking at page 1 of 5. Yeah, good question, Chi. Chi asks, is there a way to force case sensitivity? And the answer is quotes. Yep, you can use double quotes. Good question. All right, now, again, as we scroll through here, we'll see, again, checkout highlighted. And if we had anything that had error, it would be displayed as well. Okay, so again, key things to remember here, the and is optional. Your keywords are case insensitive, and you have the ability to use wildcards. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and replace everything after Apache bracket. So highlight everything after Apache bracket. Highlight that. Let's go look at another source, ladies and gentlemen. Let's type in the word error. So we're going to look at our error logs. Okay. But we want to look at our error logs. Question, what wouldn't check return the same as check? Well, no, check would only bring back literally the field check. When we use the wildcard, is anything that begins with check. So maybe there's multiple values there, okay? All right, now, right now we're looking at, is a way to search reserved words like and or. Yep, you can always go out to help.sumologic.com, Fandy. That's the best place to do it. And then when you go there, go and search for operators or keywords or ands or ors or something along that line, okay? All right, now, again here, we're looking at our source category error logs, okay? Now, right now, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, whenever we create a log, a log search, it's gonna give you the last 15 minutes. Now, we wanna run this for the last 45 minutes. But what we see here, when we click on the time, we see relative times, and you may or may not see recent times, depending on if you've been in the environment or not. And you see custom times. But if there's a time that you need or you want that you don't see, like let's say 45 here, I don't see it here, then what the method here is, you highlight what's in the actual value. Go ahead and highlight that, whatever's there. Start out with a minus symbol, okay? Once you start out with a minus symbol, type in the numeric value, 45, and we're gonna use M for minutes. If we were thinking of hours, we'd use H. If we were thinking of days, we'd use D. So again, we're gonna make sure everyone is looking at your error log messages for the last 45 minutes. Go ahead and run that report. All right, so we see our histogram. We see the total results. I have over 5,000 results. These are error messages. I want you to take a moment to kind of see how these messages are configured. They're actually configured different than our access messages. And I'll point that out again shortly. All right, so again, we look at the message here, we see the timestamp, and we may or may not see the IP address in these error messages. I have one of 232. It's displaying time and message. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and append to this expression. Let's add a space and type the OR operator. Okay. And let's demonstrate the type ahead or the click ahead, so to speak. You notice when you type the OR, you see a drop down with a bunch of metadata tags. You should see that. Let's go ahead and choose the source category. We can type this as well if you wanted to, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and type in labs. Doesn't matter the case insensitive. Let's add a slash there and let's type in Apache. And we can choose access. We can just choose it, or we can type in access. Okay. So again, what we're reading in our search here is we want to bring back our error messages or our access messages. Okay. And again, we can leave that to the last 45 minutes. Let's go ahead and run that. So I have over 28,000 results. Mine is done. See, it took relatively instantaneously. Okay. I'm looking at time and message. I see one of 1,000 and so pages. Okay. And if we take a moment here, ladies and gentlemen, just to kind of eyeball real quickly the formatting of the messages, I can see my error messages because I can see it tells you where it comes from. The error message has the timestamp, and optionally it may have the IP address. Okay. Whereas you're going to see my actual access messages. So here's my access message. I scroll down, it starts out with the IP address. Okay. I just wanted to point that out for future labs. Okay. Those two sources have their messages formatted differently, even though we brought them all back. Okay. Now I'm going to show you some of the features of the tool. Okay. I can, you can, we can together, if you watch me first, go into my field browser. Remember I told you this was called a field browser? Go into my field browser, and if I click on the name, not the box, not the checkbox, if I just click on the name, it gives me a breakdown of those sources and my results. So of these 28,000 messages, 22,000 of them are from access. 5,000 of them are from error. Okay. So again, that nice little technique you'll have as a feature for yourselves in your field browser. Okay. And I'm going to use that again later. All right. All right. So one more here. Let's go ahead and highlight everything after labs Apache bracket, the first occurrence. Let's highlight all of that. So after labs Apache bracket, let's go ahead and highlight that. And let's replace it with a wildcard. Remember what a wildcard brings? This is saying, hey, bring back everything that's under the Apache directory. Okay, everything. So, okay, just to let you know, there's only errors and access under the Apache directory. Okay, but again, we're telling it to bring back everything for the last 45 minutes. So let's go ahead and run that. And that'll go ahead and bring back our results from, of course, both sources. Okay. All right, it's spinning. What's going on? Travis, why would I want to do that? Steph, what do you mean? Can I do the IP hover again quickly, please? Oh, you mean in the actual message? That you're talking about. Here's the IP. So in my, oops, let me go back. I ran it again. So in my access messages, the IP address is first. If I go to my error log messages, I'm going to see that the timestamp is first. Okay, and that'll be just something you'll see throughout these messages. Okay. All right. There was a pop. I don't know what that means. Okay, okay, I understand you now. Sorry. So you mean over here, if I click on the source category, click on the name, I can see where it's from. I think that's what you mean. Is that what you're talking about? Okay. Yep, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yep, yep. And I'm gonna show you that again. So that was just a real quick wet your palate. We're gonna talk about it again. All right, let's keep going here. No worries, we'll keep going. All right, now let me just go back to the actual lab guide to kind of demonstrate what we've done. So we've done number 1. We did number 2. We did number 3, number 4, number 5, and we just completed number 6. Okay. Let's go ahead and highlight what's under number 7 and copy that. Let's go back to our CIP. And you can close the browser that you're in. Just close that tab. Sorry, not the browser, the tab. Don't close the browser, close the tab. Okay. And let's create a new, but this time, ladies and gentlemen, let's create a new live tail search. And before you do anything, let's talk about a live tail. Okay. So a live tail is going to show you the messages as they're being ingested into Sumo logic. This is typically ran by an administrator. Okay. So we'll go ahead and click on the run. Now, we have a governor set here at Sumo Logic of 10, which means only 10 concurrent live tails can be ran. Now, it's more than 10 of us in class. So if we all ran this at one time, somebody's going to get a message that you can't run because you reached the actual governor. Okay. Now, these are the messages as they're being ingested, and these are the 404s. So we're looking at all the access messages that have 404s that are being ingested. Okay. Now, one other thing you'll notice here is they're not highlighted at all. We have to visually scrutinize them. But if you look over to the right of the phrase running, the blue running, look to the right of that, 2 over, you'll see the word highlight, the A, you'll see the A, and if you hover to be highlight, if you click on that, we can type in 404s and then hit the return or enter key. And now, as the messages are being ingested into Sumo Logic, you'll see the 404s for the access messages being highlighted. Okay. Another thing, yes, some of you are getting that message. Good. Yep. Again, you'll be able to try it on your own shortly once some of us get out of here. Let me just do a few more things. Another thing you can do with a live tail, just like as you can do with a search here, is you can add a wildcard. So I'm now going to bring back all messages under Apache, and I'll run that. And again, it'll bring me all my messages, anything under Apache. So that's both my errors and my access messages. Okay. And Kristen, that's a great question. I often just go out to Google and look at status codes. And when I go out there, it gives me all types of responses. So again, I can look at 404s, and I think it's some sort of error. Okay, so it tells you something about the error message. Okay. All right. All right, let's go back here, and you're welcome. Let's go back. I like putting you in the mindset of the actual exam. So let's go over the quizzes down at the bottom. You can just put true or false in the actual chat. So true or false, question number 1. Keywords are case sensitive. Okay, Elaine, Rodolfo, Hazel. Okay, I see a bunch of you. All right, so you guys are all correct that are saying false. That's right. I keep emphasizing it through all my courses. It's case insensitive. Good job, Joseph. All right, question number 2. And is implicit, and ors are explicit. David, Elaine, Steph, Kristen. All right, yep, you guys are all correct. It's true. That's right, true. Oh, come on, Miguel. Why? Oh, not false. Okay, I see. I didn't see the exclamation mark. Good one. Good try. You're good. All right, and number 3 here. True or false? Keywords and metadata can use wildcards for live tail. Okay, Hazel, Amy. Oh, Amy. Oh, Christine. Come on. Sing. Come on. You just saw me use the asterisk as a wild card a moment ago in a live tail. Remember? I just did it minutes ago. Okay, so that's true. All right. Let's go ahead and click on lab number 2. Let's pick it up, ladies and gentlemen. Let's pick it up. Lab number 2 in the bottom right corner. All right, so now we're going to learn about parsing and grouping results. Okay. In the first lab exercise, lab number 1 there, it says we're going to search our Apache logs, both the access and error logs, for the last 15 minutes, and we're going to count by this source. So let's highlight the entire message under number 1. Let's copy that. Let's go back to the CIP. Let's close any tabs that are open, and let's create a new log search. Let's go ahead and paste in our expression there. Some of you may be familiar with what I introduced you to yesterday about commenting out. I am going to comment out when we start pasting so we can step through the query. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead and comment out the count by. This is actually running the same message that we've actually ran before. So this is nothing new. You should be familiar with this. Again, it's going to run for the last 15 minutes. So I'm bringing back all my messages under Apache. Okay. Now, this renders a messages tab. There's no way that we can display our results in a chart from the messages tab. We can't do that. In order to display your results in a chart, you need an aggregate. Okay. For example, I'm going to uncomment this next. This is piping, which means continue, and we're using the actual operator count by source. So we're using an aggregate. That's going to get us a messages tab. Excuse me. It's going to get us an aggregate tab, which will allow us to display our results in charts or any different type of chart. So let's go ahead and run that. All right, so here is the count. The actual aggregate is counting. It's counting the source. Now, that's a great point there, Christine. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Let me go back for a second to my messages tab. In my messages tab, you might not have been aware of this, but in our messages tab, we have a bunch of fields here, okay? And those fields were actually, one of them is source. These fields were actually extracted during ingestion. And if you wait just a little bit moment here, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about these fields. But the reason we're counting by underscore source is because it was a field that was extracted during ingestion time when using Labs Apache. And again, I'll talk more about that coming up. All right. This underscore source is a convention for using keywords. Okay, so source is a keyword, but we're using underscore to make it a placeholder. Okay, and again, we'll talk more about that. You'll see more examples coming up where you'll be able to see that, but let's continue on for now. All right, so when we run this query, we have our initial messages tab and we have our aggregates tab. This tab was rendered based off of that aggregate. We're seeing a total of our Apache access and error messages. Now, that would be similar to, I'm digressing for a moment, if I went to my messages tab and I just clicked on the word source category, not the box, click on the word, it gives me the same sort of breakdown, okay? So that was another way of kind of just seeing that the results are the correct, okay? All right, now let's go back to our lab guide. So we did number 1 here. Now, before we do number 2, I want to kind of bring up the parsing. Let me just go to my help. I want to kind of remind you of this because in case this ever appears on an exam, I don't want you to be surprised about it. So what I'm doing is going to help, and I'm searching parse operators. If you were in class with me yesterday or in our fundamentals course, we use the parse anchor in the fundamentals course, okay? So here are, ladies and gentlemen, in case this ever appears on an exam anywhere, here are the different types of parsing: CSV, XML, so forth, JSON, etc. Now, the major difference between a parse anchor and a parse regex. A parse anchor is position based. A parse regex doesn't care about the position, okay? Anyhow, I digress. Make sure you know where this is, how to get to it, and there's more than one type of parsing. Going back to our lab step, let's go ahead and let's see here. Let's go ahead and highlight the bottom 2 lines there. The last 2 lines under number 2, lab 2, step 2. Let's highlight and copy the last 2 lines. Let's go back to our CIP and let's highlight the last line, that pipe count by. Let's highlight that and let's paste over it. Okay, and let's talk about what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and comment out these 2 lines. I'm going to run the actual query, and we'll run this for the last, I'll bump it up just a little bit so I can get a little bit more data, 60 minutes, and I'll run this, okay? The other 2 lines are commented out. I want to step you through it just to kind of point things out. As I mentioned earlier to you, ladies and gentlemen, the actual formatting of the messages are different. If I look at my access messages, the IP address is the first thing that it sees, okay? If I scroll down and I find my error messages, I'll see that the first thing that it sees is the timestamp, okay? You know, I have to go a couple pages deep, but again, you'll get the, there's some right there. You'll get the idea of what I mean here. If I go to, I thought I just saw some, oh, okay. It's some error messages in here somewhere, but again, you're going to see that they're formatted differently. That's the bottom line, okay? And the reason that they're formatted differently is because they're coming from 2 different sources, okay? And that brings up the point, what I talked about. So here it is. Here's some of my error messages. So you can see the way this is formatted. It's the timestamp first, okay? So using a using a parse anchor wouldn't work because the messages are not formatted. Remember, we're bringing back both sources, okay? So therefore, we're using a parse regex, okay? Now let's talk about how this parse regex works, this operator works, okay? It first declares a new column. It's declaring IP address is going to be the new column. Okay, it's then putting up a pattern that it's looking for. It's going to first search for 1 to 3 digits, a period, 1 to 3 digits, a period, 1 to 3 digits, a period, and 1 to 3 digits. Sounds like an IP address to me. So this format doesn't care where the IP address is. It's going to go look for the format as opposed to looking for the position like we saw in fundamentals, okay? So again, I'll go ahead and run this. Okay, and again, you're going to see that it finds, no matter what the message is, it finds the IP address. Okay, so again, that kind of points out and breaks down the difference between those two sources and using versus the parse regex and the parse anchor. Okay, and then lastly, as I mentioned before, if we wanted to display this in any type of chart, we would have to first render it in an aggregate, min, max, sum, count. So right now we're going to count by the IP address. The IP address is the new field that we declared in our parse regex. Okay, so when we run this, we'll get an aggregates tab, and we'll see our total count of messages from each IP. Okay. All right, let's quickly, John, back over to our, all right, so the last thing we're gonna do here is go ahead and add a where clause. We wanna bring back where our counts are greater than 500, okay? So let's go back, let's copy that last line under number 3, lab number 2, line number 4 under number 3, we're gonna copy that. Let's go back to the CIP. Now, if you haven't been in course with me, you might not know how to add a new row, new blank line. So let's place our cursor at the end of the count because we want to add a new blank line underneath it. Okay, in order to add a new blank line, on my Mac, I'm using Shift Return. You can use Alt Enter or Alt Return may work as well. Okay, I added 2. You don't need to add 2. I just added for spacing. Okay, and then let's go ahead and paste. Now, I want you to point out, here's that example again, ladies and gentlemen, that I talked about earlier, but I said I'd go over again. Here, again, we're using the operator count. Notice it's in a different color, okay? Using that operator, we're counting by IP addresses. Then we're using in our where clause, we're using something, what I refer to as a placeholder. So again, when we use that underscore, we're referring to the value in the count. So we're piping where the count is greater than 500. Now let's go ahead and run that. And again, you know that that count gave us an aggregate tab, which would allow, and we can see that we have our IP addresses and we see all of these counts are greater than 500. Remember that we could click on the column headers and sort this if we wanted to, okay? But as I mentioned, we have a count operator which rendered an aggregates tab that allows us to actually display our results in different types of charts. So if I wanted a line chart or a column chart, or again, a pie chart. Okay. All right, let's go back to our lab guide. And let's go ahead and copy the entire query under number 4. What we want to do here is we want to identify the top 10 IP addresses by bandwidth usage. So again, let's go ahead and copy the entire query there. Piping, Christine, the piping is the continuation of your query. So once we copy this, I'll go ahead and demonstrate that again. Again, let's go ahead and copy the entire query on number 4. Let's create a new log search and paste. So we could, you could, I could, we could all, let me put this back here. And I'm digressing for a moment, don't you guys? You guys don't need to do this. I could put this all on one line, Christine. It would look messy, in other words. So we use the pipe to add a continuation of the actual code, okay? Does that help? All right. All right, so let's break this down and let's talk about what it's doing. Now I'm going to demonstrate, ladies and gentlemen, about commenting out multiple lines. No, it doesn't separate any data. It may be, I wouldn't say separate anything. It actually just maybe steps through each line of code visually for you to see. It runs the entire query, but visually so you can see, okay? All right, so the new technique that I'm gonna demonstrate here, ladies and gentlemen, is, yeah, continuation of the code, correct. I am on my Mac holding down my options key to the left of one of those rows, okay? You would hold down your Alt key, and I'm holding down my left mouse and I'm dragging a line, okay? So it creates a solid line in front of all of those rows. Now, anything that I type will be applied to all of those rows, okay? I want to comment out those lines so I can step you through the code, okay? All right, now, so I'm running this query here, and we're going to run this query. Let's run it for the last, we can do it for the last 15 minutes, that works. So let's go ahead and run that. I'm just running the first part. It's bringing back all of my access messages, okay? The next thing it's doing is parsing out. It's using a parse regex. Doesn't necessarily have to use that because we're only coming from one source, okay? But it's using the parse regex. All the messages are formatted the same. It's declaring a new column, calling it IP address. And again, we're looking for the format 1 to 3 digits, okay? And we run that. Okay. Next, we want to parse again. Now, in this parse statement, what it's identifying is saying, hey, go look for 200. Okay, whoops, make sure I did that correctly. It's saying here, go look for 200. So let me demonstrate here in the first line. Go look for 200. The next value after 200, we're going to consider that size. Again, so again, that's size. All right. I see it's a lot of chatter there. Hold on, let me see. What are we doing? Can we use shortcuts, toggles, comments, and lines? Can you repeat to comment multiple lines? All right, so to comment out multiple lines, ladies and gentlemen, let me do this real quick here. I just opened up a new browser real quickly and put that in there. So again, on my Mac, I'm using the Options key. On your, if you're not on a Mac, you're going to use the Alt key. You're using your left mouse and you're dragging down. Okay, yeah, so you got it. That's good, Janet. Awesome. All right, now let's go back to where I was. So again, this next parse statement, as I mentioned, it's going to look for 200. And again, once it finds 200, the next value after that, it's going to call size. Okay, so I'm going to run that. Okay. So what you immediately notice here is first you see your elapsed time, you see the results, your session ID, then you go into your messages tab and look at your display fields. You're seeing that IP and size are now fields that are displayed. Well, what did IP and size come from, Odell? Well, we declared IP address in our parse regex, and we used an alias in our parse anchor and called it size. So that's where those fields came from, okay? And then next, we're gonna go ahead and use the sum operator. So you should immediately know and think right away that this is gonna render an aggregate tab. We're summing that newly declared size, and we're gonna call it total bytes, and we're summing it by IP address, okay? So we'll go ahead and run that. It's going to go ahead and render a new tab. That's the aggregated tab. And we see our total bytes by IP address. Okay. Then we're going to use the operator top. And we want to see the top 10 IP addresses by total bytes. Now, some of our operators by default sort in descending order. This is one of the operators that's going to sort the results in descending order by default. Okay, so when I run that, I'll see my top 10 IP addresses in descending order. Okay, and again, if I wanted that in ascending order, I would just type in the ASC and I could get that there. Okay, all right. Let's continue on here. There's no lab query questions after this, so let's go ahead and go to lab 3, parse options. The parse options, okay? Now, parsing, by default, ladies and gentlemen, this is a key benefit of using our tool. By default, dynamic parsing mode is turned on. Dynamic parsing mode allows automatic field extraction. From your JSON log messages, okay? So this allows you to view those actual fields without having to parse them out. So you're gonna see the key benefit and the power of the tool shortly, okay? Let's go ahead together, ladies and gentlemen, under number 1, let's go ahead and copy that code. It reads the underscore source, category CloudTrail, count the AWS region. Let's go ahead and copy that, and let's go ahead and create a new log search. You can close any of those past tabs that you have open, okay? And let's go ahead and create a new log search. And let's go ahead and paste in our query. And I am going to go ahead and turn off my count by commenting out, okay? And I want to go ahead and let's run this query. Let's go ahead and run it. Okay. Now, JSON message, CloudTrail. Let's look at this message, okay? So we see key and values here, key and values throughout these messages. We also see that some of these messages have even more key values below them, okay? Now, our tool by default has this. If I go to my gear symbol, my configuration symbol up in my search, it has auto parsing mode on automatically. So auto parsing mode is on automatically, okay? So it's going to extract those key values automatically, okay? So what do you mean, Odell? Well, as I clicked over here and you saw user identity and you saw some more fields here. If I scroll down and I go down to my user identity, I see those additional fields because the tool extracted those fields out during the running of my JSON file, okay? Which allows me not having to parse it out. So I don't have to right click on and parse it out because it's already here. I still don't get it, Odell. I still don't get the advantage. Okay, let me take it one step further. I am going to turn off the auto parsing and I'll run it again, okay? So if we turn this off, then we don't see those actual fields, okay? We don't see all those fields once we run this here and turn that off. So that means now if I wanted this user identity and any field underneath it, I have to right click on it and parse it out, okay? So that's the key advantage of this actual option being turned on when you come on there and using JSON log files. Those fields are going to be over here and you can easily grab them and utilize them, okay? Instead of having to parse them out, okay? All right, so rerunning this again. So I'm bringing back all of those values. I see I have over 3,000 messages. I'm looking at page 1 of 122. I'm now going to use the count. I want to count by AWS region. Now, this goes back to one of the questions you guys asked earlier. I think it was Kristen, I'm not sure. But it was like, hey, how are we able to use this field? And how did I even know to use that AWS region? Well, here it is. If I look in my actual field browser, there it is. So that's how you were able to use that field in your query, because during ingestion time, the tool parsed out those fields for you automatically. So you can reference them in your query, okay? It's gonna perform faster as well. So now when we run our reports, we're going to actually see an aggregates tab because it's a count by, and we can see our AWS regions and the amount of messages from those regions. Okay. All right. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the no drop. Okay. That no drop option for the parse operator allows users to include messages in the results that didn't meet the pattern. So first of all, ladies and gentlemen, realize that parsing filters out, okay? So let's go ahead and grab the query under number 2. Let's go ahead and grab the query under number 2, and let's run that. That's gonna bring back all of our log messages. So let's go back our error logs, excuse me, access logs. Let's go ahead and create a new log search, and let's paste. So we're gonna bring back all of our error messages for the last 15 minutes. Okay, you see how they're formatted. Some of them have IP addresses. The ones that don't have IP address, maybe they're private IP addresses. But again, anywhere you see an IP address, maybe it's a public IP address, okay? Anyhow, let's go ahead and grab the under number under number 3, let's grab the second part of the query, okay? So we only want the parse statement under number 3. Let's grab that, okay? And let's go back to the CIP. Let's place our cursor at the end of the line and let's add a new row by using Alt, Enter, or Shift Return, whichever works for you, and let's paste. Let's talk about before we run it so we can identify what it's going to do, okay? It's telling you, hey, let's parse our error log messages. Let's look for bracket client, okay? So if you take a look here, it finds bracket client. It says the next field after bracket client, we're going to call it client IP. Okay, so what we're going to learn also, look, I'm looking at 1,723 results. When we use this parse anchor, it's going to filter out. So if you didn't meet this expression, it won't return your result. Okay, so again, as I mentioned, I have over 1,700 results. When we run this query, we're going to see that it actually bumps it down quite a bit because it filtered out. So I got over 874 results because it looked for client, and then once it found it and it saw the IP, it parsed it out. Okay, now let's go ahead and let's add a space after that client, and let's type in the phrase no drop. Okay, and let me quickly go back and kind of read some things to you. Okay, the no drop is going to bring back the actual field even if it doesn't match the pattern. Okay, that's the bottom line. All right, so the no drop says, hey, bring back all my value even if it doesn't meet the pattern. And this might be an instance where you may need to verify, make sure you captured everything. So let's go ahead and run that. So now it's going to bring it back to that large number of results I had initially. Okay, but if I look at my results, I can see, okay, this one didn't have an IP address. So maybe I need to investigate. Okay, here it did find the actual match. Here it didn't. Okay, so that no drop is working. It's bringing back any records that didn't match the initial pattern. Okay, all right, let's continue on here. There's one more line of code we need to add. We're now going to add this parse mod log SQL. So under number 4, ladies and gentlemen, is where we are. Under number 4, we're copying the last line of code and going back to the CIP. Let's go ahead and add a new blank line and paste. Before we run it, let's kind of look at the actual log messages to see what it's going to do. So now this parse is reading, hey, look for parse, excuse me, look for double quote mod underscore log underscore SQL colon. Okay, so I see mod underscore SQL colon. It finds it, okay? The next field after that, we want to call it message. So all of this is going to be called message, okay? So wherever it finds that mod underscore SQL, it's going to go ahead and bring back message. Now it's still bringing back all my records because I used the no drop initially, okay? But this parsing is going to bring back to the limitation, okay? So you can see I'm now bringing back here my IP address, and when it's not an IP address, I'm going to bring back the message. So I have something in both columns. I either have an IP address or I have a message, okay? All right, now let's go to number 5 here. We're going to use the last line of code there. We want to go ahead and get that is blank. Let's go ahead and copy that where is blank. And let's go back to the CIP. Let's add a new line at the end of our code and paste. And I'm going to quickly just kind of show you this, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I want you to be able to be aware of how this works. I often go to, when I don't know something, I go out to the actual help and I search. And again, I wanted to do this so you can see there's a difference here, okay? So again, there's the is empty, contains no characters and only white spaces. And then there's the is blank, again, no characters and white spaces, but also nulls. All I did was search for the is blank and got this information. All right, I digress. I'm gonna go back over here. So what we're telling the tool in the last line of code here, we want to make sure, bring back where the client IP is blank. So if I look at the code here, it's looking here, and anywhere it's blank, I should see just messages. So when we run that, and again, you could do this a lot of different ways, ladies and gentlemen. That's not we're not going to debate that. We just want you to see there's, the exposure of the tool here. So again, we can see here, there isn't a client IP. It brought back the messages in all those cases. So I have over 441 results of client IP messages. All right, just a couple more and we'll take a break. Hang in there, hang in there. All right. Now, the parse field option allows you to do further parsing on an already extracted field. In case this appears on an exam somewhere, I'm going to read it again. The parse field option allows you to do further parsing on an already extracted field. Okay, so what we want to do is identify the top 5 committers in GitHub. We're going to search the committers for the last 30 days and then parse their email address. So under number 6, let's go ahead and copy the entire query under number 6. And let's go ahead and create a new log search. A new log search. And paste in our query. And again, we're going to run it for the last 60 days. Was that 6? I think it was 30 days, wasn't it? Yeah, last 30 days, sorry. Last 30 days, sorry, last 30 days. Okay, now let's talk about what it's doing before we run it, just to kind of get familiar with it. I'm commenting out the parse statement and I'm running. We're looking at our GitHub log messages, okay, and we're using a keyword, committer. So we're bringing back all of our GitHub messages that have committer in it. Okay, so I'm going to run that for the last 30 days. Okay, so if I eyeball this, I can see committer is highlighted through these messages. Okay, I have over 57,000 messages. I'm looking at, well, the number is still going, it's still processing here, so that number may grow. Okay, now the next statement here, this parse statement is saying, hey, let's go and find email colon. Okay, so it finds email colon, and it says the next field after that, we're going to call it email. So it's going to go ahead and filter out this here email address. Okay, So let's go ahead and run that for the last 30 days. Now, what you notice immediately is one, in your display field, your field browser, you have a new display field, that email, okay? And you also now have an email column, which you filtered out your actual email addresses, okay? Now, we want to now do some further parsing. Let's go ahead and grab the last 3 lines of code under number 7. The last 3 lines of code under number 7. Let's copy those last 3 lines and let's go back and let's place our cursor at the end of the last line of code and add a new blank line and paste. And I am going to comment out the last 2 lines and I'm going to speak to the 3rd line, okay? So we ran it and we parsed out the email address, okay? The next parse is saying use the field command and equate it to email. Wait a minute, where did it get email from? Well, remember, we use email as an alias for our parse. So we actually parsed out the email address, and then we're parsing again using the email address. And we're saying, hey, with the email address, the field before the @ symbol, we're going to call user. The field after the @ symbol, we're going to call domain. So we're doing further parsing on an already parsed field. Okay, and let's run that for the last 30 days. Okay, so what we now see in our actual display fields is domain, email, and user. Okay, and now we see we have a domain column where the domain has been parsed out, and we have a user column where the user has been parsed out. Okay, we're now going to get an aggregate or utilize an aggregate by using the count, and we're going to count by users. So we're going to go ahead and count that for the last 30 days. So we can see the amount of GitHub committer messages by each user. We then can go ahead and use the top operator, okay? And the top, again, is one of those operators that is going to sort in descending order automatically. Also be aware with this top, we're actually using the placeholder technique. We're using an underscore because we're counting the value that's in the count operator, okay? So we're using that placeholder, and we want to use the top 5. Okay, so again, we can see here it's sorted in descending order automatically using the top operator. We're seeing the top 5 users by count in descending order. Of course, you know, you can just type in ASC if you wanted to see it in ascending order. All right, the parse multi, okay? This option allows you to extract multiple occurrences of the same pattern. Now, here's why it's important, ladies and gentlemen. Parse only extracts the first occurrence, okay? So using the parse multi will allow us to parse out all occurrences. All right, let's go ahead and copy under number 8, everything under number 8, and let's create a new log search in the CIP, a new log search. And I'm just going to run just the lab snort so you can see the actual messages and how they're formatted. So you can take a look here and you can see here, I see one IP address and I see another IP address, okay? We're going to use the parse regex. It's going to look for 3-digit pattern, 3-digit pattern, 3-digit, 3-digit, and so forth. It's going to look for that pattern, and it's going to classify the column called IP address, okay? Now, when we run this, by default, it finds that pattern. and it parses it out. So here it is. Here it is. But what about this one? Okay, that's not the same here. This one here is this one right here. Okay, so it's not bringing out the next one. What if you needed that? So you and I can together type in the word multi at the end of the parse statement. Go ahead and type in the word multi and run your query. Now you can see the IP is being parsed out. So here's the first one. If you look at the next row, here's that second one. Okay, and if you had 3 in there or 4 in there or 5 in there, again, it would parse out the additional ones. Okay, that's the parse multi. All right, so finally, ladies and gentlemen, we get to this here field extraction rules. It's similar to the JSON option when we have it auto parsing out. It's similar. Okay, so first let's go ahead and copy the query under number 10. Let's copy that. Okay, and let's go ahead and create a new log search. Now, while you're creating a new log search, I am going to go ahead and display my navigation panel. You don't need to do this. You can really just watch it, okay, because we're not doing anything. So I'm going to go down to my manage data in my main menu, and I'm going to go to my logs under my manage data. Once I get to my logs, I have 5 tabs here. I'm going to go to my field extraction rules. You can't create a field extraction rule because you're an analyst. That's why I said there's really no reason going in there. We create field extraction rules in the admin class, where we go over them, I should say. Okay. Anyhow, I want to demonstrate a field extraction rule. What's the benefit of using it? Okay. So I'm taking a look here at my demo FER field extraction rule. Okay. Remember, we're going to keep stoplights in our mind. So red is bad, yellow is look the warning, and green is good. So this is good. It's enabled. Okay. When is it going to be applied? It's going to be applied at ingestion time. These fields will be extracted and stored when the data is received by Sumo Logic. So that's during ingestion time. What's going to be the scope of this? Well, whenever you use the source category labs Apache access, we're going to parse out and give you these fields in your field browser. Okay. The benefit of this is, again, performance, because during ingestion, those fields are now parsed out. So the analyst, he or she, doesn't have to do any parse regex or parse anchors or anything like that, because they're parsed and they're available in our field browser by default. So again, demonstrating, showing you where things are, going back to the actual lab. Now I'm going to comment out number 1, the top line of code, just to display it for you. So it's going back and bringing back my access messages where all of my status codes are 404. So these messages should only bring back 404s. Okay. The next line of code, and I was sort of trying to explain this earlier, the next line of code is using something called source IP. Well, I have no idea what source IP. How do I know to even use that? Well, if you go back to your field browser, remember, these fields were extracted at ingestion time. So they're here. We're using the scope. So again, it parsed out those fields during ingestion. So now I can use that field in my actual query. Okay. And again, we can run that. Okay. And again, there you have it. Okay. All right. Let's go back to the lab. Let's wrap it up. Let's take some questions here, and then we'll take a break. So true or false? Question number 1. CSVs, JSON, splits, and key values are all parsing operators. Is that your final answer, Hazel? Is that your final answer, Kristen? Is that your final answer, Elaine? Come on. Ladies and gentlemen, we said this before. Yes, true. Remember, I brought up the actual parsing operators and I showed you JSON, CSVs, key values. So go ahead and hit the help Sumo logic and search for parsing. And yeah, you can go ahead and look for those. Okay. All right. Question number 2. Once a field has been parsed, it cannot be parsed any further. True or false? All right, you all got that one right. That's false. I emphasize that, so that's correct. All right, number 3. Fields parsed by a field extraction rules are available in the field browser. Absolutely, that's true. That was the benefit of me going through the field extraction rule, okay? All right, I'm gonna put up the timer. Let's take a quick 5-minute break and let's come back and finish up the class, okay? I'll see you in 5. Okay, sorry about that. Welcome back. Hopefully you got an opportunity to get away from the monitor for a moment. All right, so we had completed our lab number 3. Let's go ahead and continue on. Let's go ahead and get to lab number 4. All right, so we're going to introduce you to some conditional operations here. All right, we're going to write a query that scans our access log messages for the last 60 minutes. And we're going to evaluate our status codes of 200 versus our status codes of 400. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy the entire query under number 1. Copy that query. Let's go back to our CIP and create a new log search. A new log search. And let's go ahead and paste in. And I am going to comment out. And again, we're going to run this for the last 60 minutes. So I'm going to change my time to 60 minutes and run just the first line. Again, you should be familiar with it. I like running it to kind of step you through the code. So we're looking at all of our access log messages for the last 60 minutes. We're going to do a parse where we're looking for our status code. So we're going to go and search for HTTP. And the next field after that, we're going to classify a status code. So again, in the first message, I see there's the HTTP. This next field is going to classify as status code. Okay, it's going to go look for that. So it finds that. And again, I had 29,000 messages. Now it's going to, of course, decrease that a bit here. Again, all it's doing is finding that status code. So I have, if I go over here and click on my status codes, I can see the breakdown of these 29,000 messages. 2 of them, 22,000 of them are 200s, and so forth and so on. All I did was just click on the phrase status code, and it gave me the percentage and the account. You click on it again, and it hides that. All right. So in the next line here, so again, we filtered out, we call that status code. Now we're going to use that field that we created, that alias that we created. We're going to use it called status code. We're saying if status code equals 200, create a new column, a new alias, and put a 1 in it for true, put a 0 in it for false. So if the status code is 200, true, else false, or 1s and 0s. Okay, so let's go ahead and run that. So we're going to get a new column created called successes. It evaluates that status code, and we should see a 1 wherever we see a 200. Okay, so in that successes column, we also see that as a new display field as well. We then are also going to evaluate our status codes of 400. If it's 400, we'll put a 1 in a new column called client errors. If it's not 400, we'll put it at 0. Okay, so again, we'll run that for the last 60 minutes. And we'll have a new column called client errors. So if we look in our field browser over to the left, Client error, status code, and successes are all things that we created from those lines of code. So we can see here at 400s, I should see my client errors should be true. Here's a 500. Both client errors and successes are false. This didn't meet the condition. Okay. Here's a 200. I see trues in my successes. Okay. So there's that if then. And then finally here, we're going to go ahead and use an aggregate. We're going to sum up all of our successes. Remember that successes came from our status codes. Okay. And we're going to call that success. Ooh, pardon me, drag race. And we're going to call that success count. Okay. Then we're going to sum our client errors, which came from our status codes, and we're going to call that client errors count. This, of course, is going to render a new, an aggregates tab. So let's run that for the last 60 minutes. And of course, if we look at our aggregates tab, we now have both that success count column. So we have 22,200 success count codes and over 903 404s. Okay. You can try this optional test knowledge on your own at your leisure, but I just want to speak to it for a moment. In the actual query that we ran, we had our status codes equal to a particular value. In the optional test here, we're using matches and we're using a wildcard. So in this first one, it says matches 4 asterisk. So that could be 400, 4,100, 41 million, whatever. Okay. And again, it's saying matches 5 asterisk. So that's the major difference between the equal and the matches. All right, let's go ahead and continue on to using subqueries in lab number 5. Some of you may be familiar with SQL. Some of you may be familiar with that. And you know that when you use subqueries, that inner query results is used to run against the outer query. Well, that's the same theory here, ladies and gentlemen. If we take a look here, we're going to use a child query that's going to bring back an IP address. And we're going to use that IP address as a keyword of our parent query. So we're going to do this in 3 phases, ladies and gentlemen, in 3 phases. So let's go ahead and first grab what's under number 1. That's our parent query. Let's go ahead and grab what's under number 1 and copy that. And let's create a new log search. Okay. And let's run it. So that one you should be familiar with. We're bringing back our access messages. Okay, no problem. For the last 15 minutes. All right. Now let's go back to our lab guide. Now, let's grab what's under number 2 and I'll speak to it once we paste it over. Again, let's grab what's under number 2, copy it. Let's create a new log search. As I mentioned, we're going to do this in three searches. Okay. And let's paste. And let's talk about it. Let's talk about what it's doing. So the first line there, ladies and gentlemen, is actually going to go and search our error logs. It's looking for a keyword. File doesn't exist. Okay. So when I run that for the last 15 minutes, it searches my error logs and it finds that file doesn't exist. Now in our data, it just so happens that that IP address is the same throughout all 30 of these records, okay? But again, hopefully you get the example. So again, we found our error messages that have file doesn't exist. In those messages, we're going to look for our time, our error, and our IP. So basically what it's going to do is going to say, okay, here's my time. I'm going to parse this out. Here's the error. I'll parse this out. And then I'll find client and I'll parse out the IP address. So you're going to get a new column called time, error, and IP. Okay. I'll run that for the last 15 minutes. So again, here's the time. Again, there's that error being parsed out. And here's the IP. As I mentioned, of these values, these IPs are all the same. Okay. Next, we're going to go ahead and count up all the IP addresses. There's only one, so it's going to count up all of these numbers. Okay, so we're going to count them all up. We get an aggregates tab, and it says, hey, you have 28 of these. Okay. Now, the next line, I want you to use your imagination for a second, because it's using the top K operator, which means that that's the ranking, the top rank. That's what it's actually doing. It's different than the top operator. Remember, we used the top operator earlier. Okay. Now, the top K would work if it would really be instrumental if we had multiple IP addresses where it could rank it. But since we only have one, again, you don't see the real validity of it. But again, be aware you have that capability. Okay. Again, it's only one IP address, so it's going to rank that. Okay. So we want to use this IP address as a keyword for our actual parent report. So let's go back to our lab guide and let's copy what's under number 4. Everything under number 4, we're going to copy and go back and create a new log search. And I want to walk you through the code. Okay. First of all, be aware, ladies and gentlemen, there's a pipe that I'm going to just add to a new row so it doesn't look so weird. So again, be aware that compose should be on a new line just to make it visually appealing. Okay. Now I'm going to step you through here. All right. So first of all, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to bring back our access log messages. However, we're using the subquery operator. That subquery colon. Then here, everything under this here, whoops, didn't mean to do that. Put that back there. I wanted to make sure we do this correctly. All right, so everything after this colon, all of this stuff after this colon is actually our child query. It's going against the error log messages. It's looking for a keyword, file doesn't exist. It's parsing out the time, the error, the IP, and it's counting and ranking. So all of this is our child, excuse me. All of this is our child query. The only thing that's different is we added the subquery colon and the compose IP keyword. So this here last statement tells the tool, hey, use the IP as a keyword for this parent query. Okay, and let's go ahead and run that. So of course we only have one IP address. It's passing that and bringing back all of that. Okay. Rahul, the difference between top and top K is for ranking. Okay. So if we had multiple IP addresses, we could rank them using the top K. The top is just going to put them in an order. Okay. I would say top 5, it'll just give me the top 5. The top K is going to rank them. Okay. So hopefully that kind of differentiates. And you can also jump over to the Sumo help sumologic.com. Okay. All right. Very good. Let's go ahead and keep going, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I want to point this out to you. You also have more subquery examples and information and documentation in your lab guide. So you can always click on that and find out more information. Again, there's a lot of information out here, again, that's available for you. All right, let's go ahead and go on to lab number 6, plotting clients on a map. Lab number 6. Okay. First, I'm going to digress for a moment. You can just watch. I want to talk about this geo lookup, and you can just watch. All I'm doing is opening up the help on geo lookup. Now, we have a partnership with Newstar. Okay. Newstar wants us to provide the IP address. Okay. We provide the IP address to Newstar. Newstar populates a table that we send the IP address to. When we provide that IP address, it returns the latitude, the longitude, and the count. And if we want other fields, it will return that as well. So all we have to do is provide the IP address and look it up in this Newstar populated table, and it's going to return the latitude, longitude, and count. And if we want additional fields, it'll return those as well. Okay. So again, all I did was went to the geo lookup map. Anyhow, digressing and going back to our code, let's go ahead and copy everything under number 2. We're going to run a search for all of our Apache access log messages and parse out the IP address. And then we're going to use the IP address to search for latitude and longitude. Okay. Let's go ahead and run this query in a new log search. I am going to comment out these lines just to step you through it. All right, so we're going against our access messages. The first thing we're going to do here, again, I'll run that. We're going to parse out the client IP. Okay, so it's looking for the dash dash. Okay, so if I go to the first message here, I see the dash dash. Before the dash dash is the IP. Okay, so it's parsing out the IP. All right, so when I run that, I now have the client IP for each one of these messages. Now, the suggested way to read a lookup statement, ladies and gentlemen, is from right to left. Okay, so we parsed out the client IP address. We're now going to provide the client IP address for the lookup table to give us the latitude and the longitude. So we parsed out the IP address. We're using it to look it up to bring back the latitude and longitude. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead. Here's our latitude and longitude for that IP address. We're now going to count the actual latitude and longitudes for all those IP addresses. Okay, excuse me. So we're going to count for all those messages from each location. Okay. Now, this is in no particular order. So here's where we can use that sort by or order by. Again, here's that operator. Remember, we can go ahead and click on the column headers if we wanted to do it quickly, but we can put it in our code by using the sort by or order bys. And let's go ahead and run that. Okay, so now we're seeing all of our latitudes and longitudes and the total count of messages from the latitudes and longitudes. Okay. Now, by having the latitude and longitude, that allows us and enables us on our aggregate tabs to actually click on the map icon. So we can display our results in the map icon. Okay, so we can see our messages all over the regions from around the world and where they're coming from. Okay. All right, very good. Now there's optional test your knowledges. I'm gonna leave that to you because we got a lot more labs to do. So again, I'll leave those for you. We always leave those as examples for you to try at your leisure. Let's go ahead and go on to our calculating changes and moving averages in lab number 7. I want to point out to you the difference operator. Okay, the difference operator basically is going to give you the rate of change between consecutive rows. Okay, so again, the difference calculates the rate of change in the field between different consecutive rows. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy what's under number 1 in lab number 7. We're going to run this for the last 15 minutes. Again, what's under number 1. Let's go ahead and create a new log search and paste, and I'll step you through it. I'm going to comment out all these lines. I'll run it for the last 15 minutes. So again, you know about the access, you're bringing back your access log messages. Okay. The next statement says create buckets. Okay, we want to create time slice bucket. We want to create 1 minute buckets. Okay, running this is not going to give you anything. It's not going to render until we actually get to the count. All right. Next, we're saying, hey, go ahead and count by my time slice. Notice we're using that that format where we're using the underscore because it's a placeholder. Time slice is an operator. So we're going to run that. So we'll get an aggregate tab, and now we'll see the amount of messages in 1 minute buckets. But again, these buckets are in no order. So the next statement allows us to sort by our time slice. And we're explicitly saying ASC because we know the sort by will sort by in descending order by default. So we're sorting by our time slice in ascending order. And we can see that our numbers now go in chronological order. I can see my minute and the message amount of counts of messages each minute. Okay. And then lastly, that diff is going to give us another column and give us a value. So we want to do a difference of the count. All right. Again, it's using that technique where we're using the underscore because again, count is an operator and we're running that. And the way we would read our results, if we take a look at the first row, it's saying, okay, in that first minute, we had 490 messages. In the second minute, we had 535. 535 minus 490 is a negative 45. In the third, we had 513. 513 minus 535 gives you that 22, and so forth and so forth. So again, we're counting the numbers, subtracting the prior number from the other, and getting the difference. Okay. Now let's talk about the smooth operator. Smooth operator. Now the smooth operator is going to calculate those rolling or moving averages. Okay. Again, we want to measure our rolling or moving averages. Okay. Let's go ahead and copy what's under number 2, the entire code under number 2, and let's create a new log search. All right, so again, we're getting our access log messages, but we want to bring back only our 404s where the status codes are 404. Oops, pardon me. We're going to render that in 1 minute time slices. Okay. We're going to count by that. I'm going to comment out those last 2 lines. We're going to count by our error counts by time slice. Now, if you're wondering where error count, excuse me, we're going to count and we're going to call it error count, pardon me. So let's run that. So I have a new column called error count. It's counting up my 404s by 1 minute buckets. The next message is going to, of course, sort, put it in a ascending order, my time. Okay, so I can see in the first minute I had 15, second I have 30 and so forth. So at minute 39, I had so many, minute 40 and so forth. Okay. Now next we're going to utilize the smooth. So we're going to get the rolling averages. So here we see our minute by minute. So I can see at 7:39, I had an error count and a rolling average of 8. I add up my error count in the first row and the second row, add them up, then divide them by 2, and I get my rolling average. I add up the first 3 error count columns and I divide it by 3 and I get my rolling average. Okay. Now the numbers are great. They're good, they're visual, they're awesome. Okay. But again, visualizations might be a little bit better. Let's go ahead and choose on our aggregates tab. We want to display these results in a line chart. Okay. Now this is okay. However, it's sort of difficult to display or read or differentiate when you have these two lines, okay? What you and I can do together is go to that gear symbol, the settings. So just to the left of the phrase add to dashboard, you should see a gear symbol. And let's click on that. Let's go down to the phrase change series. And let's change under our error count, let's change the chart type from a line to a column. So this would be the technique if we wanted to display multiple values. Here, I can now see my error counts and my rolling averages on a minute-by-minute basis. Again, in case this ever comes up on an exam, you're going to go to the gear symbol, go to your change series, and you can change the type to display your series on different plots, okay? All right. Let's go ahead and go to lab number 8. The needle in the haystack, the log reduce. Again, let's copy what's under number 1 in lab number 8. A new log search, we're going to run a log reduce on our snort security data to identify unusual activity or intrusions. So let's go ahead and run that in a new log search. I'm going to comment out the log reduce so you can actually see the messages, okay? And I'm going to run that for the last, let's change it to 60 minutes. I'll change it to 60 minutes. So I'm running my snort logs for the last 60 minutes. Now I want you to kind of take a look at the message to kind of understand the log reduce a little bit more. So I see the first message, mine says classification, detection of a network scan. The next one says attempted information leak. The next one says web attack. The next one also says web application attack. Then I see another attempted information leak, okay? So I have over 6,000 of these messages. I want to use some of that machine learning, okay? Some of those advanced analytics. If I do, or you click on the log reduce, or you remove the actual comments, the tool is going to go through and look at all of those messages and create a signatures tab to group those patterns together. So of those, all of those messages that I talked about, it's going to go ahead and tell me, hey, this message of those 6,000 messages, this one appears 3,000 times. Okay. Of these messages, this one appears 1,700 times, and so forth and so on. Okay. Now, I could, you could, we could go a little further. Let's imagine I work for all of you, and my job is to designate whether messages are high priority or not. And you, once I do that, you are going to evaluate them. So let's say, for example, ladies and gentlemen, this first message says attempted information leak. I know that we installed a new patch and that patch has some leaks. So I know this might not be important for you to look at. So I can look at these here up and down fingers and I can demote this. Watch the relevancy number. When I click on demote, it changes it to a 0, which is low on the relevancy. Well, the other approach is if I deem this to be very important, I could promote it. So now the relevancy is a lot higher. It's a 10. Okay. So again, these demote and promote is for you to change the actual relevancy. Okay. You also have the ability to edit your messages, but in case this ever comes up on an exam, you cannot delete them. You can edit the message, but you can't delete it. Okay. You also have the ability to focus in on a particular group of messages by clicking on the number count. So if I want to look at all these 3,140 messages, I can click on the number count. Okay. Now that focuses on these 3,140 messages, and I can go through them if I need to further investigate. Okay. I can also look at the host and see the messages before or after, the surrounding message. Maybe I want to find out what happened before or what led up to this message. Or maybe I want to find out if this message affected anything else, what happened after it. So I can do that for my host, I can do that for my name, and I can do that for my category, where I can look at the surrounding messages. Again, that's all for my actual log reduce. Okay. All right, let's highlight everything that's under the snort. If you got anything in it, let's highlight and delete it. I only want you to see the source category lab snort. And let's run that for the last 60 minutes. Let's run it again. Okay, so that was the log reduce. Now we're going to talk about the log compare. Okay. The log compare allows us to compare our current logs to a time period prior. So if we just click on the log compare, it's going to use the time shift operator and compare it to 24 hours ago. Okay, so I'm looking at the last 60 minutes and I'm comparing it to 24 hours ago. The same time period 24 hours ago. Okay. And if we take a look here, that log compare is going to give us, renders a signatures tab. And the way we read this is that we're seeing our today's messages and we see that percentage difference. So the difference from 24 hours ago is a negative 1.8. Okay. These messages, the difference from 24 hours ago is a positive plus 5.5. Okay. And if I change this period, let's see, I think I can do it too. Let's try and do it for, you don't have to do this. I want to do this so you can see there's some other values that we need to display here. I don't see them as of yet. So I'm going to increase the time period here just a little bit here. We should see something called new and gone in these log compares. All right, so here I increased the time a little bit more. It's not mandatory that you do or not, but you're going to see here when I get down here, I see the percentages, but then I see something called gone or new. So that means that it was there, but it's the gone means it's no longer there. The new means that it's new. It wasn't there before. Okay, I don't see any of here, but again, it will produce some of those. Okay. That percentage is the percent difference, the percent change, Miguel, from the time period before. So again, if we look at our results here, I see I had 77,000 messages today, but the time shift period, the 24 hours ago, is a 44%, a negative 44% difference. So it's less than what it was. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead. We did that, and we did comparing to different time periods. So you should be on lab number 9 under number, well, we don't have a 2, it's the number 3. So on number 3, I want you to go ahead and highlight the last row of code under number 3. Let's go ahead and copy that. The last row of code, it should be the where ABS. Okay, and let's go back to our log compare, and let's add a new blank line and paste. So in this where, ladies and gentlemen, we're using the actual absolute operator. We're saying where absolute delta percentage is greater than 25. So the absolute is going to bring back both negative and positive values of anything greater than 25. So let's go ahead and run that. So it's now looking at those percentages and it's only going to look at those and evaluate if the percentage is greater than 25. And maybe you want to identify when there's a large percentage of differences. Okay, so here you're saying I got a new here. That means that it's new. It didn't exist before. It didn't exist 24 hours ago. Okay, so these percentages are all greater than 25, even though they're negative, even though there's a new or gone, they're still greater than that 25. Okay. And mine is still processing because of the time period. And lastly, in number four, we're going to copy the last line of code in number 4, that where is new. So let's go ahead and copy that, and let's replace our where absolute with the where is new. So basically, anytime we see that new, remember I pointed out that new, maybe we want to identify where there's new. If it wasn't there before yesterday, but it's there today, maybe we need to go update our actual server or something along those lines. So let's run that. And it's only going to bring back where there is a new in the actual percent value. So the absolute is a math function. It's going to bring back the absolute value. So again, I'll just paste that in the lab for you, in the actual chat for you. There you go. You can click on that link and it'll tell you more about the absolute value. All right, so again, mine's still running. I guess I used a longer period than needed, but it's going to bring back the is new items. Okay. All right. While that's running, let's continue on. We want to kind of go ahead and speed it up just a little bit. Let's click on lab number 10. Lab number 10. I want to explain to you the outlier. Okay. Chi, you can Google that, you can use the help.sumologic.com and find out answers to anything you want to know. Okay, help.sumologic.com. All right, so I want to quickly open up this here outlier to kind of demonstrate what it does for you. The outlier is going to give you that standard deviation. Okay. It has 4 fields in it that relate to the standard deviation. It has a window field that's going to set the data points, the mean and the standard deviation. It has a threshold field that actually calculates the violations. It has a consecutive field that gives you a consecutive indicator of data points to trigger a violation. And then it has a directions field that is going to display above or below or both above and below the actual thresholds. All right, so let's go ahead and copy the entire code under number 4. Again, we're going to search our access logs for our 404s for the last 60 minutes. We're going to render them in 1-minute buckets. We're then going to identify any of the 3 standard deviations and plot them on a line chart. So let's go ahead and create a new log search. I'm going to close some of these. We got quite a few open. And again, we're going to run this for the last 60 minutes. As I mentioned, I'm going to comment out the last line, but it's going to look at my 404s, render them in 1-minute buckets, count them, and put them in a new column. Okay. So I have an aggregates tab now. Here's my error count and a minute by minute breakdown, minute by minute buckets. Okay. This last line of code, the outlier, is going to take the error count. So it's going to take these numbers and it's going to calculate the standard deviation based on these items. So let's go ahead and run that. So let's take a look here, okay? I'm looking where I see in my error count, there's a 1, okay? That's what I'm looking for. If I see an error count indicator where I see a 1, I want to look in and evaluate. So on my line 6, I see the error count value is 5, okay? I see the upper range is 21 and the lower range is 9. So that's outside of this upper and lower range. So it's going to turn on the error count indicator and give me a violation, okay? Now, if I change this number to 2, you can just watch, you don't need to do this, and I run this again, what that means is I need to have something consecutive. That error count needs to have a value consecutively. So let me change the number of my threshold. I'm going to decrease this so I can return more values, okay? Again, you don't need to do all of this. I'm kind of digressing a bit here to give you some real meaty information. All right, so I'm going to run this again so you can kind of see how this works. So I changed the consecutive to 2, and I changed my threshold to 1.1, okay? So now let's take a look here at my line here. I see here's my actual error count. I see my upper boundary is 17, my lower boundary is 13. So of course that falls out of the boundaries. So it turns on the error indicator and it gives me an error violation, okay? I can see the next item also, which is consecutive. Here's the 22, here's my upper, here's my lower. It's of course out of the boundary. So here's my 1 indicator and then here's my consecutive. Okay, now the numbers are great, but it's also a good idea to display this on a line chart. Okay, so here's your upper boundary, here's your lower boundary, and here's your outliers. So this plus and minus on direction, that gives you above and below. So if I were to remove the minus, I would see, and run it again, I would see all of the above the threshold outliers, okay? And then again, if I were to change that to a minus, I would of course see the below the threshold outliers. Let me talk again about the threshold. The threshold again controls the boundaries. So I chose 1.1, but if I put it back to 3, you're going to notice that this cloud changes height. Again, that controls the boundaries. Okay, see how the cloud got bigger, your upper and lower boundaries. Okay, all right, let's continue on. We got 2 more and we're done. So hang in there with me, ladies and gentlemen. 2 more and we're done. Let's go to identify future trends in lab number 11. Identify future trends in lab number 11. We're going to use the predict operator, and I need to let you know about the predict operator, so just bear with me for a second. There's 2 types of predict operators, ladies and gentlemen. There's the linear regression model, and there's the auto regression model. We're going to use the linear regression model in our example. So again, all I did was open up the predict in my help, and here's the information. Let's go ahead and copy everything under number 3. We're going to render our access log messages in 1-minute buckets. We're going to count our 404 statuses. We're going to predict the future trend of our 404s in 1-minute increments. So let's go ahead and go back to our CIP, create a new log search. Let's change our time period to 60 minutes. Again, sort of walking you through the code. We're looking at our access log messages, our 404 status codes. We're going to render it in 1-minute time slice buckets, and we're going to count our status codes. Okay, I'm going to do all the way up into that point for the last 60 minutes. So again, you know the count is going to render that aggregates tab, so that's why we have this. And we see here our actual error counts. Now we're going to use the predict operator, which is going to predict our future for our error counts in 1 minute buckets. So again, we now have our prediction, and if you were to scroll through your pages, you would eventually see that you're starting to not see numbers, okay? A better way to view this output, ladies and gentlemen, is to display it on a line chart. So let's go ahead and click on a line chart. And you can see my prediction is trending up. Yours might be trending a different method. But again, I can see that it's predicting that I'm going to have some 404s in the future. That line is predicting upward. Okay. And let's go ahead and grab our lab number 12, the transaction operator. Again, the transaction operator is if you had inventory, if you needed to do some type of inventory of items, okay? It provides an insight to correlate events, helping you identify issues of your flow of data, okay? So that's the transaction operator. Let's go ahead and highlight all of the code under number 3. All of the code under number 3. We're going against our econo mark for the last 24 hours. We're going to look at the statuses and identify the status for the last 24 hours. So let's go ahead and create a new log search. And let's run it for the last 24 hours. Okay, and let me walk you through the code to tell you what it's going to do. So again, we're going against a different source, our econo mark. We're parsing out the IP address. If we don't find this parsing format, we still want to bring back the row. That's what we're bringing by using the no drop. The transaction ID is going to use that IP address to actually find out the status or the state of an item. So let's go ahead and run this. And I first want to go ahead and look at the messages tab to kind of give you a high level overview of what it's doing. Okay, so again, it's checking out. That's a confirmation state. There's some other statuses as well. So I can see others, and I can go out here and find out other statuses. If I look at my aggregates tab, I can see the from state and the to state. Since we utilize the transaction operator, it allows us to use the actual diagram. So this here flow diagram icon on your aggregates tab, you can click on. And we can see right here in the shipping information, if we click on that or highlight over it, we can see our statuses of shipping. We can see there's some red there. There's some inbound and some outbound traffic. We can see there's some things in our cart, and there's some confirmation, there's some over shipping. But another analogy of why this might be helpful is if you can imagine, I have my wife and I are going to the grocery store, and I have the shopping cart, and I put items in the cart. I turn around and get other items. She takes the items that I put in the cart out of the cart. So again, this sort of leads to that. It gives you that status of where things are in the shopping cart. All right, let's get to that last lab, and you guys have done an awesome job. Let's go ahead and get to lab number 13, creating meaningful alerts. And the first thing I want to do here is tell you about our blog post that we talk about alerts. You don't want to create alert for everything, okay? So we give you a nice little blog post, and I'm going to post it, a nice little blog post here that you can read through, and it describes what makes a alert meaningful, okay? And they should be actionable, okay? Let's go ahead and grab all of the code under number 5. All of the code under number 5. Again, here we're going to go ahead and rather than getting alerted on simple counts, we're going to learn to create an alert that will notify you when our 404s increase at a higher rate than our original traffic measures by 200s. So let's go ahead and copy that entire code. We're going to run this here for the last 60 minutes. Let's go ahead and create a new log search. And let's run it for the last 60 minutes. Again, just to kind of recap of what this is doing, ladies and gentlemen, it's looking at our access logs. It's bringing back 200s and 400 status codes. It's going to render it in 1-minute buckets. It's then going to create new columns called success and fails. It's going to put ones in it. If it's 200s, it's true. It'll put zeros if it's not. It'll do the same thing for the 404s. We're then going to sum all of our successes, sum all of our failures. We're then going to create a percentage. Now I'm going to get all the way up to that percentage so you can see the code to that point. That aggregates tab, pardon me, is created based on the sum aggregate. So we can see our failure rate percentage. The last line of code is going to use that failure rate percentage and create and identify outliers. So let's go ahead and run that. So again, it creates that failure rate percent. We look at the failure rate percentage. Okay, if you scroll over, you'll see that failure rate percentage. And again, we'll see the indicator. Okay. Now we're going to add this last line of code, this where clause. So under number 6 here, go ahead and copy what's under number 6. Go back to the CIP and add a new blank line as the last line of the code. And we're telling, hey, only bring back where the failure rate percentage violation is greater than 0. So wherever it's greater than 0, that's what we want. So when we run that, those are the instances where we're going to create an alert. Okay, so it brought those back where the actual failure rate percentage violation was greater than 0. Okay, now what you and I can do is we can go back up to our actual save icon of our search, or go to the 3 dots, the more, and we can choose save as, and then go down to the create, schedule this search, change the frequency from never to, let's say, 15 minutes. It gives us other options. And the key thing that I want to point out here to you, ladies and gentlemen, is the alerting capabilities of our tool. You can get alerted by email. You can do some script actions, or maybe you want to do some webhooks to get to our actual, maybe you want to get webhooks to get to Slack or some other alerting systems. So again, that's the key thing about this. Again, having that ability, you can of course put it a recipient. And of course, you can also add a subject, as well as you can render it before. Okay. And when I save this, of course, in order to turn it off, ladies and gentlemen, I would go back to the edit capabilities of this search. Okay, go to the edit, and then whoops, go to the edit, and then edit this schedule, and then turn it off. So if I click never, now that's off. Okay, so that was the last lab. Awesome. So now we need to get you ready for the actual exam. So hopefully you guys are all ready for the exam. Let's get you there. All right, let's close out of here. So to remind you again, ladies and gentlemen, you are logged into our training environment. When you want to take the certifications, first log out of our training environment. In order to log out of our training environment, you make sure your navigation panel is visible. Go down to the main menu, which is the darker shaded area. Click on your login ID, and then sign out. Okay. Then you're going to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment. Then you're going to click on the actual home tab, click on the certification link under the home tab. Then you'll click on the Get Certified in your environment. That'll bring up our skill jar app. And then you are going to click on Get Certified. And we have just completed the Search Mastery exam. Excuse me, the Search Mastery course. You're going to click on the Search Mastery exam. Okay. It's going to tell you about it. There's 30 questions. I will be here for 60 minutes. Again, it's open notes, open book, open internet. Okay. You need a 75 to pass. Okay. All right. Any questions? All right. So on behalf of all the trainers here at Sumo Logic, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to present to you. Hopefully you will learn a lot of information. We look forward to seeing you in upcoming training courses. Good luck. Again, I'll be here for an hour to help you. There may be some questions that I didn't cover that they've thrown in here. So if you have trouble with those questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. If you're going to take the exam, I'm going to put in the chat the link to our Uber Eats. If you're not taking the exam now, you can, of course, exit the actual Zoom session. For those of you that are going to take the exam, after you complete the exam, you can, of course, exit the Zoom session as well. Thank you all again as well, and good luck.